Hello and welcome to the Sunday Guardian podcast by Joyeeta Basu. I want to talk about the Canada and Justin Trudeau, Canada relations, India-Canada relations, and specifically because I have a guest who has just returned from Canada and knows exactly what is going on over there. Many of you will know him. He is none other than Abhijit Iyer-Mitra. Welcome, Abhijit.
Thank you.
To the studio.
Thank you.
He's Senior Fellow, Institute of Conflict Studies and Peace in New Delhi. He is a geopolitical expert, and his areas of specialization are nuclear and defense tech. Now, he's also known, and he insisted that I must mention this, by the way. He's also known as the dancer of peace, and he believes that wherever he has danced, peace follows, and that includes Iran, North Korea, and Israel. But it did not happen in Syria because Syria did not give him a visa.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a problem. Now, and he's, of course, as you know, he's an internet celebrity. Everyone knows him, he shook up the Indian army establishment, literally shook it up, I think, 2 weeks back. Yeah, but the government did take action on certain things he mentioned. So, Abhijit, how was your Canada trip? And what did you see over there?
Scary.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Normally when I travel abroad, I'm very, especially to Europe, you go to interesting parts of the world like North Korea or Afghanistan and things like that because it's more of an adventure and you're going there to learn. Because, when you work in nuclear, for example, you're talking about North Korea, and nobody who talks North Korea nuclear has actually been to North Korea, right? So you don't know what the social dynamics on the ground are and things like that. Afghanistan, 99.99% of the people who talk Afghanistan have never been to Afghanistan.
Right.
Or they've gone to these 5-star hotel conferences, they haven't mixed with people or smoked hashish with the Taliban and things like that. So, it was really important to go to Canada, and I expected it to be not one of these trips because when you go to the first world, say Europe or North America, you expect it to be a very relaxing trip where you feel safe, good food, great cafes and things like that. It wasn't, because the first thing that hits you on landing in Toronto is the fact that Toronto is not a white city. It's a completely brown city. Everybody manning immigration there is brown. Everybody at the luggage carousel. Now, we landed at the same time as an Air France flight and things like that. Even the Air France flight, everybody was brown. And you go through the city. Fine, I was staying in Mississauga, which is one of the suburbs, very close to it's Mississauga, Brampton, Surrey. Surrey is the most Khalistani, followed by Brampton, Mississauga is not really. And I'm like, where are the white people? Then they said, we'll take you to Oakville, which is, a lakefront area, very posh, very expensive real estate, and there'll be white people there. Or Toronto, the central business CBD, which they're downtown as it's called in North America, where there'll be white people. And there weren't. There was a token white thing. So, the browning of Canada is the first thing that becomes very obvious.
But what is scary about that?
Now, what is scary about that is, normally, this wouldn't be an issue at all.
Yeah, exactly.
But here, when you go to places like Brampton or Surrey, you see the physical intimidation being carried out, not just by the Khalistanis, but when you're talking to the Hindus, there's a sense of fear out there because they believe the police, both the Peel police under whom Brampton comes and the Surrey police, that they are under complete Khalistani influence. They are acting as agents of the Khalistani power brokers out there. And this really, it's not very different from Air India 182 Kanishka, where, the police and the Canadian intelligence, CSIS, they actually colluded in covering it up. Now, they want you to believe that it was a series of unfortunate accidents that led to the loss of data and information and wiretaps and everything. And increasingly, anybody who reads Terry Milevsky's book will tell you that it was no accident.
Yep.
And all the wiping out of data and everything was done very deliberately. So, what becomes very clear is that you're in a first world terrorist state, which is actively aiding and abetting terrorism against India.
And you mean to say most of these people who are in control actually of the police system and on the ground, they are all Khalistani supporters?
And intelligence, by the way.
Okay.
Especially intelligence, especially Canadian intelligence. Yes.
And what is the infiltration like over there? What percentage, I would say, is it over there? If you can put a figure.
See, the thing is, it's very hard to gauge infiltration as a percentage.
Right.
I think the problem out here is that it is, it's a small community that's extraordinarily well organized. And even people who aren't from within the community are completely subject to the political power of that community.
Okay.
Right? So it's impossible to gauge. So, for example, Peel Police is headed by this Tamil guy, Appadurai or something like that, Durayappa. And he claims to be a victim of terror, that some of his family were killed off by the LTTE, and yet everything he does out there is almost indistinguishable from the tactics that the LTTE uses. So, for example,
is he a Sri Lankan Tamil? Or
he's a Sri Lankan Tamil.
Okay.
So, for example, when the Hindu Sabha Mandir was attacked by these Khalistanis, they were carrying kripans and swords and things like that, which was not declared a forbidden protest despite the display of arms, right? There was also a Peel police cop who was involved in those violent attacks, who was suspended for a while and has been reinstated as no wrongdoing was found. But then what he does is he refuses to call the rest of the community into the community consultation meeting. He calls just two people who are known to be these corrupt so-called community leaders who have their own business interests and basically sell out the community. And he knows that these two, there are several Hindu committees and sabhas out there. He only calls two people. This guy called Madhusudan Lama, who's the head of the Hindu Sabha Mandir, and this guy called Rupnath Sharma, a Guyanese Indian who's the who runs his own temple out there, okay, in Mississauga. And what he does is he gets them to issue a statement saying we condemn both the violence at the Hindu Sabha Mandir and the violence at the Malton Gurdwara. At the Malton Gurdwara, there was no violence.
Okay.
You understand? There was no violence at all, which is why we've not seen any video of any kind of violence happening out there. And in fact, what this Durayappa's police went and did was they went into the protesting Hindus, arrested them for a perfectly peaceful protest because they wanted to create a false equivalence out there, right? So this guy is a completely corrupt cop. Now, when we say corruption, we're talking about, this isn't. But you see, this is why it's impossible to gauge infiltration out there. Because this is a Tamil, whereas like some of his family were killed by the LTT, but parts of his family were also members of the LTT, right? And yet he acts as a stooge of the Khalistanis. Now, the police should be acting based on evidence, and that is why all the charges against the Hindus who were arrested, the Arianavi boys, are being dropped.
Okay.
But they're also dropping charges against the Khalistanis who attacked, even though there is actual physical evidence of attack. I mean, we've all seen those videos, right? And what do you do about this? When the police itself is compromised, that's running a political agenda, what do you do?
So, but what about, what kind of influence do these people have when he talk about, why Justin Trudeau is pandering to these Khalistanis? What kind of, because it has to be ultimately everything is political.
Yeah.
What kind of voting influence, electoral influence do these people have?
They have it's more than just voting influence, right? The problem is they are invariably, the Hindu immigrants who go there are mostly overwhelmingly white collar.
Okay.
They don't have time to come out on the streets and protest. The Sikh immigrants who go there are all muscle power. They get into truck driver jobs and things like that. So in the entire Khalistani, first, there's no such thing. Anybody who's been to Punjab knows there's no Khalistan movement out here
Yeah.
or anything like that. It's a figment of the imagination that exists in somebody's mind, right? But what they do is they go out there. Simple little boy from rural Ludhiana or rural Patiala lands up in a first world country, no resources, no nothing. They get completely entrapped by these ghettos, these Khalistani ghetto bosses. And they are basically running a huge drug racket. So you look at it, they monopolize the truck business. What do you need for transporting drugs? Drugs. What is the cultural milieu for normalizing drugs? Rap music. And who dominates the rap music scene?
Punjabi rappers.
Punjabi rappers. They do gun running out there, and gun running is also a cultural milieu in rap. And so they've got the cultural, they've got the captive immigration ecosystem, and they've got the means of transport. So they are acting as the local lieutenants of all these drug cartels out there, right? So it's financially very powerful. Second, what the Liberal Party, which is, I'm going to call them Labour, just because it's easier to understand conservative and Labour.
Yeah.
Because they're not liberal. Let's be clear, they're criminals.
Justin Trudeau's party.
Justin Trudeau's party. So what ends up happening is Justin Trudeau realizes that he's got this community which is heavily criminalized into drugs and gun running, and there's about, say, 15 to 20% maximum who are radicalized. Out of them, say about 6 to 7% are in this entire criminal nexus. The remaining 60 to 70% want to have nothing to do with it, but they're really scared and they keep quiet. Why? And this is where cultural relativism comes in, because the police are told white people attacking white people is very serious because we expect first world norms. But brown people attacking brown people, see, this is a cultural thing in Punjab, We need to understand, we need to be accepting of this diversity. You need to be accepting of this. And so everybody knows that if a Khalistani comes and attacks you and you're brown, the police just won't take it seriously.
Okay.
Right? Now, he's used this for his clique within the Liberal Party to capture seats. So, for example, in Vancouver, where that Harjit Sajjan, the defense minister guy, is from, there is the Khalistanis, they do cooperative stuff with the Conservative Party. It is always the same guy who's put up against him. He always loses the election, but he always gets a Conservative Party ticket from that particular riding. Why? They call it riding, we call it constituency. Why? Because it's guaranteed to see to it that Harjit wins. Right? And that is very useful to Trudeau, because he knows then that's an absolutely safe seat where there's no competition. And it's only going to be a farce of a competitive vote in Vancouver. In other areas, places like Surrey and Brampton, the people who stood, Khalistanis actually went into the primary, started beating up people, physically evicted more moderate candidates, and saw to it the extremists got this thing. And won't make the news because, it's brown and brown violence and things like that. They are also able to raise money very rapidly because they run the drugs and gun business. They operate on cash. Now, individuals in Canada are able to give up to $1,200 or maybe $1,700 per person towards a politician. Now, because these guys operate in cash,
you don't know how much money they're
getting
or raising.
And it's literally what we call hafta vasuli, where the Khalistanis make money and they put in a portion of the funds to the Liberal Party. So it's essentially a Liberal Party, Justin Trudeau drug racket, drug mafia. Yeah, the Liberal Party is a drug-funded party.
Wow, that's quite a claim to make, but yes.
But it's true. If you go there, you begin realizing this, because that is when you talk to people. And if you go talk to Canadian broadcasters about, this is beyond the pale, these are accusations, well, that's what you're seeing on the ground. Right? So it is endemic. I mean, you look at all the drug seizures that have been happening. They're all people, so-called Khalistanis, being arrested with multi-billion-dollar drug seizures.
Yes.
One guy has $1.5 billion. I mean, in America, you get $20-30 million drug busts. We're talking about billions of dollars worth of drugs being busted out here. Now, what other conclusion do you come to? Right?
So when we are looking at the elections, I think next year, the 2025, the elections are, will Justin Trudeau, are there chances of his losing the election? And if he does, yes, why? If he does not, why? And what is the option?
There are very high chances of him losing unless he puts a rabbit out of the hat. Because remember, he is a purveyor of the lowest kind of identity politics. You know, he doesn't care if he sets Canada on fire as long as he wins. Right? Reminds you of somebody in India, doesn't it? But that's the way he is. And the problem is, he's very good at it, unlike our chap in India. So what ends up happening is right now he's on a very sticky wicket. But notice how smartly he's playing it. Why? Because there's a foreign interference report on Chinese
China.
having bribed, cajoled, coerced, whatever, lots of Canadian politicians. He has the report. He's not making it public because the moment a member of parliament is briefed about it, secrecy laws kick in and you can't talk about it.
Okay.
Right? Now, if you don't have the report, you don't know the names in the report, so you can't talk about it effectively. And so he started up this whole India foreign interference thing precisely to deflect away from that report, which would possibly even indict him in all likelihood. And you know, the levels of corruption are scary transparent. You know, the then defense minister, who's now minister for something else, Anita Anand, who's actually the member for Oakville, the once posh area that's now been turned into, Brownistan. The Canadian government told everyone, you don't have to pay for vaccines, we're going to vaccinate you for, sorry, not vaccines, the testing is going to be done for free. Okay? And guess who got the contract for it? It was a $250 million contract, which was given to Anita Anand's husband.
Okay.
He got a monopoly on it. Now, you think without competition, he gets a monopoly on it. Investigation, zero. How is this even an OECD country? I mean, Punjab is more OECD compliant than Canada is.
But people are unhappy with Trudeau. I mean, the very
They
possibility...
are, but notice Pierre Poilievre isn't asking for Anita Anand to be thrown in jail. So when the leader of the opposition himself is essentially green-lighting corruption like this.
Alleged corruption, let's put it this way.
No, it's not alleged.
Okay.
It is known. Because there
right.
was no competition. The fellow got the contract single source. And it was a $250 million contract. So Madam's retirement fund is set.
So what is the problem with Pierre Poilievre? What is his problem?
So, you know, the problem is much deeper with Pierre Poilievre than it is with Justin Trudeau. And we don't have a Trudeau problem, we have a Canada problem. This should have been obvious given how much CSIS was complicit in the bombing of Air India 182. Remember, they had that man Sukhvinder Gill or something,
Yes.
who was an actual informant within the cell plotting the bombing. He was pulled out one day before and given witness protection, settled off in London, and never heard from ever again. So CSIS knew exactly what was going to happen. They knew the plane it was going to happen to. They deliberately diluted security on the plane with the bags going in and things like that. This wasn't just a Khalistani bombing of 182. The problem is India never talks about it, but it was a Canadian intelligence bombing of an Indian aircraft. Right? So we've always had a Canada problem, which is why till Modi went there, I think in 2017, no Indian Prime Minister had visited Canada. Rightly so. Stephen Harper kind of fixed that, but Pierre Poilievre is no Stephen Harper. Now, Justin Trudeau, like we discussed, uses the Khalistanis. He's instrumentalized and weaponized the Khalistanis for his own political victories. Now, because they are overwhelmingly low income, and you know, low income voters tend to vote for Labour, Democrat, that general demographic thing, they tend to vote Liberal out here. They tend to vote for Justin Trudeau. But trying to attract the community, what Pierre Poilievre has done is he's surrounded himself by 4 extremely toxic Khalistani stooges. The most visible one we talk about is Tim Uppal. But Tim Uppal, everybody who's spoken to him out here, including his own party colleagues, believe him to be something very low intellect and low intelligence as well. He's there more as a sort of consensus candidate. You remember what Margaret Thatcher used to say about consensus, right? Consensus is where everybody agrees to do what nobody has any faith or conviction in. So he's that kind. He's stupid enough to be made what he is, which is why he'll never be anything other than Minister for Multicultural Affairs. He will only be the poster child of multicultural affairs because he doesn't have the brains to do anything. And what does the Minister of Multicultural Affairs do? He goes on Jewish holidays to Jewish places, on Christian holidays to Christian places, on Native American holidays to Native American places, etc., 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 right? The three really dangerous people are a guy called Arpan Khanna, whose wife is a Khalistani terrorist.
Oh gosh.
She's very closely linked with the WSO, and she's been pushing his tendencies, his Khalistani tendencies, and he gatekeeps Pierre Poilievre. So he was the one who was responsible for cancelling the Diwali celebration, which they then had to do damage control for, right? Because the guy who hosts it, a conservative MP, he saw the Khalistanis were raising a big this thing about it. He sent the letter to Arpan Khanna, and Arpan Khanna is the one who said, oh yeah, just cancel everything, right? Very toxic fellow, because tomorrow you tell him, say I don't believe in Khalistan, he'll say I don't believe in Khalistan. So, and he'll go back and tell the Khalistanis, see, I had to do it because it was camouflage. Very dangerous fellow, smart guy, which is why he's dangerous. The two people who are much, much more dangerous are Jasraj Hallan, who is the shadow finance minister, who will probably become the finance minister, out and out, infinitely more dangerous than Tim Uppal. And the most dangerous of them all is this guy called Param Gill.
Okay.
Bald shaved Sardar. He's the most Khalistani of the lot. He knows where to put his money. He knows how to manipulate issues. He knows how to build narratives and things like that. Now, Pierre has ring-fenced himself with these four people. So no Hindu point of view can ever get through to him, because if you've got anything against Khalistan, these guys won't let you meet him. Unless you're people like Madhusudan Lamba or Rupnath Sharma, the two priests and the Mandir guys who are anyway in the Khalistani pocket. So what do? And like we discussed, Pierre Poilievre is no Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper is probably the greatest Prime Minister Canada has had in its history. This man has neither the courage, nor the conviction, nor the principles of Stephen Harper.
So that's a very bleak situation when we are looking at India-Canada relations,
It is more than bleak. I actually fundamentally expect a terror attack on Hindus originating in Canada to eventuate at any time in the next few years.
In Canada, you're talking about?
Originating in Canada.
It could even be in India.
Quite possibly with the collusion of CSIS, like AI 182 was, and the RCMP.
That's really scary.
It is what the Hindus they believe.
So what exactly, here so many people, so many of these Indians, they go to Canada, talking about, the education over there. They think that they were being welcomed over there. What is their future?
They are. See, we need to remember, Canadians are extremely decent, warm, friendly people. You go to the outskirts of Toronto where the white people are, they're warm, they're friendly, they're completely laid back, chilled out guys. They're Americans without the superpower complexities and things like that, So it is extremely welcoming out there. Okay. If you go outside of Brownistan. Okay. With Brownistan, you have all these brown... They've basically taken the baggage from the motherland and transposed it to Canada. Okay. So it is warm and welcoming. But let's look at the other side. People from there coming back here. Everybody out there realizes that the Canadian High Commission in Ottawa and the Indian High Commission in Ottawa and the Indian consulates in Toronto and Vancouver are completely compromised, because there's a going rate for visas and OCIs out there.
That's a very serious charge to make.
It's a very open thing. The people there are telling me this.
Okay.
There are Khalistanis and known people who have called for violence against India who are constantly given OCIs and visas because there is a whole bribery racket happening out there. Apparently there are three methods of doing this. One is direct cash payment, which becomes very difficult for the visa officer there to justify while bringing back. The second is promises that the kids will be given visas and brought over to Canada for education, which happens a lot. And the third is a lot of transfers that are done to their families using Western Union and things like that back home in India. Right? So you also have to track all the financial transfers that happen from Canada to the families of these visa officers back here. There have been instances where the community has gone and complained about a visa being given to somebody to have people not in the visa service, because the visa guys are the tier 2, it's not IFS officers, they're those tier 2 tier 3 officers who deal with the visa things. Tier 1 actual IFS officers have been complained to, and they've turned a blind eye, and the only belief and the community there believes that some percentage of the profits that the visa officers are making is going to the IFS guys out there.
I'm certain the Ministry of External Affairs will be
The
jumping.
Ministry of External Affairs doesn't care. Hindus out there are very, very clear that they are, when they go to the High Commission in Ottawa or they go to the consulate in Toronto, I didn't meet too many people from Vancouver, so I can only talk about these two. They actively put roadblocks or ignore. They don't help the community out. They have learned to keep both of these bodies out of their functioning because they realize the moment they talk to these the High Commission or the consulate, the Canadian police and Khalistanis seem to know their plans.
That's dangerous.
Well, you have a compromised High Commission and a compromised consulate. Clearly. And it's nothing illegal that they're planning. They're talking about media narratives, how to play the media to counter certain narratives, what narratives to come out. And they find that completely unhelpful or leaking information somehow, somewhere.
That's absolute.
So they've actively decided to keep the High Commission and the consulate out.
Who? These groups.
These groups. The Hindu groups out there.
The Hindu groups. And the thing is, you see, why is it that the MEA does not sit up and take note of this? Aren't these people complaining to them?
I think we need to understand, and Joyeeta, we have disagreed on this, and we will continue to disagree on this, that, we have a minister who's very good for 15-second sound bites, but in terms of the organizational reform of the MEA, has been an abject failure. He actually went on the Raj Shamani podcast and spoke an outright untruth, which was that the IFS has been expanded when we know it hasn't. The actual number of operative officers has actually reduced to increase the promotion prospects. He was trying to show all the other organizational staff as an increase in the IFS, which we know clearly is not. There is no regular integrity testing. There is no through career training of the IFS that happens. And this is an institutional rot, which has been allowed to fester because the minister has very good bureaucratic skills at papering over things. The actual reforms that need to happen have not happened. This doesn't mean everybody in the MEA is like that. We've got some fantastic people in the MEA, but they don't compensate for all the rot that's happening out there.
Fine, let's get back to talking about Canada. So what do you see? So first of all, first question is about should Indian parents be worried about sending their children to Canada? Do you see this,
Yes and no, and I'll tell you why. Yes, because Canadian universities have gone woke. Do you really want your son coming back thinking he's two spirits, or your daughter coming back thinking she's a man trapped in a woman's body and needs to undergo gender surgery? Number one. Number two, if they keep their political opinions to themselves, there is absolutely no danger to you, per se. Okay? Just tell them not to be too visibly Hindu. But is that really the environment you want to send your kid to, where you're scared of displaying your identity? That said, when you remove the indoctrination and the identity, the caliber of education there remains fairly good. So it's, and the quality of life there. Remember, even in a place like Surrey, which is essentially a Khalistani slum, the quality of life is way better than it is in, say, South Delhi or the poshest areas of Chandigarh or Malabar Hills in Bombay or Boat Club Road in Madras.
So that is the lure that people have.
That is the lure. That's always going to be the lure.
Yeah.
I mean, why does a Punjabi kid from, say, rural Patiala go to Canada to become a truck driver? Because even that amount he's earning, he'll be initially able to afford a room and ultimately a house far off from the city center, but a house with, double glazed windows, heating. He'll be able to buy his own car. Food will not be an issue. Healthcare will not be an issue. Why wouldn't you want to go out there? Crisp, clean air, AQI of 7 or 10, factor of 100th of what, here you're talking about 700 is not bad. There, anything over 15, 16 would almost become over 70 things would shut down.
Health crisis,
Right? So, why would you not want to go there?
So, what is the future in terms of India-Canada relations? And specifically, so when Trump is coming in, because as we know that Biden has not been okay, in certain areas he has been okay with India, but in many areas his administration has not been.
Look, this was always going to be known about Trump, that strategically he was always going to be aligned with India. Okay, he believes in China first, not Europe. He believes, Europe is yesterday's story. The real center is China. And to Biden's credit, he followed through on a lot of policies that Trump initiated in terms of China. Unlike, say, Obama, who was actually withdrawing from Asia and focusing more on Europe. Trump changed it, and Biden continued with those policies. But with all conservatives in America, they want to bring manufacturing back to America, which is always going to be a problem for India. Now, you can't have your cake and eat it as well, as the saying goes, right? You can only you can either have one or the other. You can't have both. And if you keep throwing defense contracts at him, say $2-3 billion a year, that's easy to manage. You remember how anti-Qatar he was, and Qatar threw a $15 billion F-15 deal at him. He just completely kept quiet about Qatar, right? So you just have to throw a few deals at him. The tactical is manageable. The strategic is important, because when the Democrats, India is almost seen as a strategic enemy. How can these people be our allies when they're a walking, talking gas chamber killing off Muslims every day, and
the ecosystem finds its voice,
right.
expression through
so
them.
So that is not going to be an issue. The Republicans, Trump and his cabinet, have absolutely no ambiguity about India. India is a friend. India shares our values. Those values are the same. They've been maligned by the liberal press, just like whatever. But hey, you're stealing American jobs. Give us back some of the jobs, or buy our stuff. Which is, I think, a much more easy relationship to have than somebody telling us you're Nazi concentration camp guards, you're unreliable, we have to cut you off, but you can have access to our markets.
And in fact, if you look at what has been happening in terms of Niger and Pannoon and all that, that is why the Democrats have been coming after India. And Trudeau has taken full, I would say, advantage of it. So how would you say, it's because now you are saying Pierre Poilievre is a big problem as well. So what is the future of India-Canada relations?
It's not good. It's going to go down, down, and down, and down.
Okay.
There's no real reset I see possible, because Canada really isn't important to us in that sense. The problem is Canada thinks it is the Canada of the 1980s, and they think India is the India also of the 1980s. That is not the case anymore.
Or 1940s, perhaps.
Or the 1940s, right? And his father, Pierre Poilievre, had that thing. He refused to investigate Khalistani terrorist because he said you may be Commonwealth, but the Queen isn't your head, so we can't extradite people to you. And those people ended up carrying out the bombing ultimately. And like I said, CSIS was completely complicit in that bombing.
And too much malign influence of the Khalistanis.
Too much. Where do you see the reset happening? Pierre Poilievre, Stephen Harper tried doing a soft reset. Stephen Harper tried that. Pierre is not Stephen Harper. You see, he's got too many insecurities. He's tried to get everybody close to Stephen Harper out because he wants to show he's his own man. There's that baggage of coming out of Stephen Harper's shadow, right? So not only do I see him not having the courage to change it, his current selection leaves no confidence in his ability to change it. The way he pussyfoots around issues means he would rather not deal with issues head on. He approaches things with an ostrich approach. The moment trouble comes around, you bury your head in the sand. Where is the trajectory or the person asking for the reset?
Yep. So it's bleak completely.
It's bleak. And for employees of CTV and CBC, we actually have very stark, this time I met a lot of them, very, very stark things about how they push a certain agenda to suppress reporting from one side and increase reporting from a Khalistani victimhood side. And given now, see, with CTV and CBC, they should be after viewership, right? Hindus are more in number than Sikhs out there.
Yes.
So viewership should dictate that Khalistan should be lower and Hindus should be higher. Yet you've inflated Khalistani priorities. Why is that? Right. So it's ideological. You have a thing called True North, run by this absolute racist woman called Candice Malcolm. She's married to the head of Shopify. Now Shopify is this online e-commerce platform which all these if you run an e-commerce anything in India, you have to use Shopify. Now Shopify funds True North. She's married to the Iranian who sits on the Shopify board, and they're actively funding anti-Hindu narratives on True North. And Shopify is allowed to do business in India. You should be seizing their IPR and allowing Indian companies to use it for free.
So what should India do?
Well, for starters, go after Shopify.
Okay.
Just seize their IPR. Tell them you don't have intellectual property right. Your software is ours from now on for Indian companies, and gift it to Indian companies for free.
And in the larger context, what should India do in terms of India-Canada relations?
India-Canada relations, stop giving Pierre Poilievre a free pass. Bring him under pressure now. Start cancelling OCIs.
Yeah, that is important.
Start with Jasraj Hallan's family. Start with Preet Gill's family and his contacts. Start with Arpan Khanna's wife and their contacts. Start with, but because your visa sections are so corrupt, where people, you've seen this, one of the worst guys, Nav Bhatia, I think his name is, I forget the exact name. Last month, out and out fellow who supported the genocide resolution against India, classifying 1984 as a genocide, was holding his daughter's wedding shebang in Jaipur or Udaipur, I forget where. All of them, arch Khalistanis, had been given visas to come here.
So basically cancel all
He's some super fan for some, this thing out there, super fan for some ice hockey or I don't know, basketball, I don't know sports club out there. How was he given a visa? By even the most minimal standards of vetting, a man who had supported 1984 being a genocide should have been denied a visa. His entire family and brood of Khalistanis was given visas to come and celebrate their wedding in Rajasthan.
Wow.
Now you tell me the MEA isn't corrupt. You tell me the visa section there isn't sold out.
A lot of thinking has to be done, and trust me, Abhijit, this podcast is going to cause a lot of heartburn. I don't want to. Yeah.
Let it. I don't care. I'm not here to make friends.
Yeah. Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. People are not going to be happy.
Well, I'm not happy.
Yeah, I can understand.
And you know,
Indians-
if you're incompetent and corrupt, you shouldn't be happy either.
Okay, thank you, Abhijit. Viewers, I hope you liked it. This was quite explosive. In fact, of all the podcasts I've been doing, I think this is going to, there will be ripples. Thank you, Abhijit, for coming for this show. And thank you, viewers, for watching. Until the next time.